Thank you very much, guys. Firstly, great to be here today. I was going to have a cup of coffee, but after Phil's talk, it probably wasn't the right time to do it. So I've got my water here. Guys, I'll start with a very quick introduction. My name's Abby. I'm the founder and director of Love Recruitment. We are a recruitment agency, and we purely specialize in fitness and gym recruitment. So that's what we do from our side. Let me see if I can work this out. Yeah, so I guess today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the following things. Obviously, tell you about the kind of stuff we do firstly, and then move into straight about two main problems that most companies face these days, which is how to recruit staff and how to keep staff. And I think there's very few operators, actually I don't think I've heard of anyone, to be honest, who actually has mastered either one of them, to be honest. It's a really, really tough thing to do, and unfortunately, it is getting harder, not easier, but hopefully there's a few tips here that you can help from your side as well. In terms of what we do, as I mentioned, this is what our kind of sector of space is. So we support clients across a variety of operators, not simply any particular type. They go all the way from your big commercial gyms to your boutiques, to your franchisees, to your independents. That's what we do from our side. In terms of where we get a lot of our data from is every year we do a couple of surveys, and one of the surveys was completed last year. The new one's coming up in the next month, so we'll obviously share the details with everyone here. And the Pulse survey is very much to understand the pulse of the industry. What do candidates actually want? What do people actually want when they're looking for work? What are their kind of habits in terms of where do they apply for? What kind of websites do they go to? What kind of stuff do they want? What kind of benefits? And that's what the Pulse survey is. And hopefully it gives employers, the whole purpose of it is to give employers a better understanding of what candidates actually want. We always base it around the UK and Ireland. That's our main market. So all the candidates who responded to this are from the UK and Ireland. We establish what the NPS of the industry is. We've done it for 2 years already. So we already have an NPS score from a candidate perspective, what they find their employers to be, and what employers should be looking at. And I guess hopefully the goal for all of this is to improve retention, is to improve recruitment across the space as well. Because one thing that we're constantly, people may think that you're competing for staff from each other. Actually, that's the smallest place you're competing from. I think anyone in this room, you're not competitors when it comes to staff. The main competitors actually are other sectors. That's the main places where people take people from the fitness industry, and that includes hospitality, retail, sales, recruitment, all those spaces where you've probably seen staff members after a few years leave too. So we're not simply competing against each other. Actually, all the data kind of proves that we're competing against other sectors much more. And again, the kind of response and everything, these are a few kind of numbers out here for you guys to know. So we had in total about 550 respondents. Everyone worked in our sector. We went through our own database, LinkedIn, Instagram, and they're primarily experienced candidates. So this data here isn't from graduates. It's mainly from people who worked in the industry for at least a couple of years, to give you a bit more insight from that side as well. Right. Let's get going. It's probably the scariest slide of everything out there. So we asked candidates, and again, these weren't people who are actively looking for a job. These are just people out there on every single platform out there. And the question was, how likely are you going to be looking for a role in the next 12 months, or the next 6 months? And it was 68% of people basically went out and said, we're likely or extremely likely to be looking for a new role. Now, there's a bit of headline grabbing here, so I do agree with that, but also I do mean that out of the 68%, everyone's not going to walk out of the door. That's not going to happen, but there's an intention of 68% of people who responded to us. They would go out and at least explore once a year. They may go onto Indeed, or they may go onto any other websites out there, to go LinkedIn, whatever, to go, actually, I'm looking for a job. And that is a bit scary. The previous year, the number was 70%. So again, it's there and thereabouts. 18% of respondents said they would not likely look for a new role in the next 6 months, while 14% were undecided. And again, I'd like to reiterate this here, that this isn't that 68% of our workforce walks out. But all this means that at some stage, a big chunk of the workforce is considering going, should I look at my options in the next 12 months, in the next 6 months? So why are they looking? What is the main purpose of people looking? I think everyone thinks it's money, which is a very high number, as you can see there. But the highest one, and having recruited for 15 years, I could say that clear progression opportunities is by far the biggest thing I ever hear. It always does come down to money, and you can't hide away from that. Money does mean a lot to everyone. But the key thing that people keep coming back to us when they're saying, why should I move my company to this other one here? They always ask us about progression. What is the progression there? And when you dig into their reasons for leaving, it almost always is progression-led thing. Now, what does this mean for you guys? At the end of the next few slides, I'm going to give you our kind of tips in terms of how we advise clients. And I promise you, it's not going to be just pay more money, because that could be the easy thing to do, but I don't think it fixes too many things in the long run. So in terms of clear progression opportunities, our biggest recommendation is something we've implemented in our own business, and it's something that we recommend to all our clients, that every single person working in your organization has to have an annual progression plan. And once a quarter, you have to sit down with them, or you should sit down with them, and actually see where that progression plan leads to. And I will stress, progression means different to different people. We've got people in our own business who don't want to progress into team management. They don't want that. They want to be in a position where they earn more money. Brilliant. There's some people who are desperate to run the business, who want to be, in a sense of a gym, who want to be a general manager. Brilliant. Some people want to work towards having more annual leave. Progression means different for different things to different people. And I think it's super important that you're sitting down with all employees. And if it's the business owner, you sit down with a GM. If it's a GM, you sit down with your staff members to actually have their own progression plan for the next 12 months. And I think you'll find it really, really helpful, because you'll understand where their motivations are. And the second thing is you'll also understand where they are on their own journey. From my own point of view, I can relate to a lot of gym owners. I run a 15-person business, so we're very much a small and medium-scale business ourselves. And a big thing, again, I don't want to add any work to anyone's plate here. What we do a lot from our side is actually a majority of the progression plans is from the candidate's perspective. They've got to come do the work. I'm not doing anything from my side. If they do want to progress, that's the things that they have to deliver on. And I think most of what we've noticed, and most of our clients have noticed, it does help a lot in terms of them actually putting the accountability back on the candidate. In terms of higher salary, again, the easiest solution could be just pay more money, but that doesn't work. But what does work, and what you should absolutely be doing, is having an annual salary audit of your business. Are you competitive? Are you not competitive? We did this for the first time 5 years ago because we lost 3 members of staff, and we realized that we were paying probably 20% below the market rate. And that put us to go, we have to check every year, what does our salary look like? Now, you could just do it yourself by us, and the ways to do this is you can either go onto websites and just see what the going salary rates are. If you know a lot of competitors, you can ask them what they pay their GMs, your personal trainers, your assistant managers, or call someone like us up and just say, listen, what are the going salary rates? That's my club. That's the size. That's the turnover. What should I be paying? And then it's your decision to make. Should I pay that money? Should I not? That's your decision. But I think you need to have that information, up-to-date information on an annual basis. And that's something we recommend to all our clients. So why do people not apply for jobs? This is probably more applicable to when you are recruiting yourself. And the biggest reason, which has happened the second year in a row, is candidates do not apply for jobs, or they almost go against applying for the job if they don't see a salary on the job advert. This happens, and honestly, if there's anyone who has applied for a job recently here, it is super annoying to apply for a job where it says it's competitive. Competitive for whom? It says it is industry standards. According to what research? And so employers are expecting for a candidate to put a covering letter in, which they should, to go through a process, and at the second stage find out it's 20 grand below what they wanted to do. And that's not fair for anyone. It wastes your time. It wastes everyone's time from that side. Now, there is one exception to this, where from an employer's perspective, it is quite sensitive when you have an opportunity where you don't want the rest of the staff members to know about. And that is fine. That does happen. You know, it may be a role where you're like, actually, I don't want the entire group to know what the salary for this role is. I do understand that. And the advice in that case is just to put a generic ad up. Don't reveal the company's name. Candidates are more likely to apply for that advert than one that doesn't have the salary on it. We see it all the time, and every single one of our ads, for whoever we recruit for, has the salary on it, because candidates need that. That's a simple thing that they need from their side. The second thing is generic ads, which are normally got some spelling mistakes in them. I hope there's no spelling mistakes in this presentation, but it's basically generic ads or ads which have got mistakes in them as well. Candidates do not want to apply for that. The reason for this is there's a very common thing that does happen, and in different countries it's different. The most is America. That's the worst when it comes to this, where people are putting ads for the sake of putting an ad. You need to look busy. There actually isn't a job out there. Or if you are putting an ad which has got very little information, that is an impression on your brand. And that is something that people will go, actually, I don't really fancy applying for this. The amount of times we hear candidates say, is that really a job there? And people don't want to invest as much time as they probably used to back in the day. And I'll come to that in a second in terms of the reasons for that. But again, your ads have to be engaging. The best ads we read are ads which tell a story, which are telling you, okay, this is our gym. This is why the vacancy exists. This is the progression we can get. These are the benefits that we offer. Those are the best ads. And we test adverts all the time. And I promise you, a well-written ad does get more responses at the same salary compared to a poor ad on the same. It does make a difference. Next point here is, so they've applied for the job. So you've written an ad with the salary on it. It doesn't say competitive. It's a beautifully written ad. It tells a story. What do the candidates do next? What are they doing? How are they judging you? The first thing they do, and the big part of the data, is that they will go straight onto the company's website. They don't go onto Indeed. They don't go onto Glassdoor. And again, that's something that massively shocked us. We thought Glassdoor would be the first place that people go to. They don't. They don't go onto any of your reviews on job sites. They simply go onto your website. They want to see what your website feels like. If you've got a great website, it helps you. If your website is a bit random or is not updated, or you don't have a website, which we have seen in the past, that's a negative against your brand, against the candidate's journey. And the second place, obviously, they'll also go into LinkedIn, but the thing that really, really surprised us, but we've tried to make sense of it, is Google reviews is really high in terms of where candidates go to. Now our explanation is, because we're in an industry where we're serving customers, candidates want to work for an organization which generally has got a good reputation. So if your Google review rating is 3.6 compared to 4.8, and if someone's reading your reviews and going, this is the best gym I've been in, it's an amazing team, amazing culture, that gives them much more information compared to being on Glassdoor, which, let's be honest, you're probably going to have a disgruntled employee after having a couple of glasses of wine who's probably written that review. But a Google review, actually, same can be said that about most negative reviews at times, but I think people trust a Google review more because that's the kind of environment they're coming into. And I do think there's a lot of sense in that. It's probably quite easy to work in a club or in any organization where the reviews are higher because your members are probably going to be quite lovely compared to where everyone's slating the club. So that is something that we look at a lot at. And again, in terms of our kind of tips for that, is fairly straightforward, is definitely keep up your Google reviews. Make sure that you always are looking for that, not just from a customer perspective, but also from a candidate perspective. And the website, if you can update it, absolutely do that from that side as well. I think this probably breaks the myth slightly, because every single candidate I've ever interviewed always say that this is the only job that they're interviewing for. And that's over 15 years. Everyone claims that the job I've got for them, that's the only job they've got. But that isn't true. And apparently only a third of candidates actually do that. And this slide for me is to give you guys the information that this is what people are doing. But our biggest tips and how we process things is that you have to start treating candidates like your managers in clubs actually start treating leads, where if you get an application comes through, it has to be contacted. You are competing with some well-oiled machines out there where they will be contacting, interviewing candidates very, very quickly and making a decision whether they want to process that. Our own internal system is 24 hours. If someone applies and we want to speak to them, our teams have to speak to them within 24 hours. And I'm sure there's other gym operators, there's other recruitment agencies who are doing the same thing. And in recruitment, time kills all deals. You may have the best job out there, but if you contact someone 7 days after they've applied, that's the stats that's going on. They may say to you that you're the only one that I'm applying for and interviewing for, but the reality is they're probably interviewing for other places, and that happens all the time as well. So our biggest tip in terms of the recruitment process and the pace at which you work at is do it as quickly as possible. Something that we absolutely don't recommend is interview days or closing days. Please don't do that. A closing date of an application it just kills everything, because what you're basically doing is you put up the ad on the 1st of December, the closing date is the 31st of December. Someone who applies on the 1st of December has already done all the other things before your closing date finishes. You interview someone in the first week of January, basically all you're going to be interviewing is the people in the last week who've applied, which is the 23rd till the 31st, which will be not that many people. Our recommendation is you get an application, exactly the same thing you do with a lead is contact them straight away and just put them through the process. And you rather reject them rather than not having the opportunity of rejecting them. Benefits. What do candidates really want? Not surprising. Flexible benefits. Flexible working was on top of people's benefits, which is quite hard for clubs to implement, but I'll go through a couple of examples in a second, which have come through from gym owners who've actually implemented certain things. 20% listed higher pension contribution, which again surprises a little bit, but these are experienced candidates, so people are thinking about pension more. And second year in a row, candidates don't consider work social as a benefit. I think they consider it as a part of working. I don't think they consider it as a benefit. So taking the teams out for beers and everything else isn't something that's considered a social when candidates are applying for it. Now, I think let's almost go back to the flexible working thing section there. It's really hard for gyms and operators to go, how do we implement flexible working? If you've got a pool, you can't have a lifeguard working from home. That just doesn't work yet. You know, if you have a general manager, could they really be working from home? Potentially. And we've actually had operators, we've got an example of 2-3 operators who've let general managers do 5 hours a week working from home if they wanted to. And in that time, they do things like payroll. They do things like all the admin stuff they have to do. Everything that they don't physically need to be in the club, they do that. And is that something that operators can implement? Again, it's really tricky. It's not the norm, but we do feel that that will be the norm for a lot of operators going, actually, once you reach a certain level, and it's probably going to be when you are a general manager of the club, you can do 5 hours, 4 hours a week, whatever, you can do that working from home. And I do feel that will be the norm moving forward from that side. And the NPS, it was quite interesting. Second year in a row, that's the NPS for our sector. A third are promoters, a third are passive, a third are detractors. Is this good? Is this bad? Honestly, guys, don't know. Because it's 2 years of data. We don't have similar data from other sectors. We've tried to get it. We don't have that. But it's very similar for 2 years in a row, which again, So in essence, of a club which has got 3 members of staff, one person loves them, one person is 50-50, and one person thinking of leaving. That's the rough kind of data that we've got from our side. Right. I've got 2 slides now on retention. And before I start this, I have to say I don't really have all the answers here because, again, as I said, none of our clients have really nailed this at the moment. This is getting harder for most people. Anyone who's aged between 12 and 27 is defined as Gen Z. And a majority of the workforce, especially people in roles like personal trainers, people in roles like assistant managers, receptionists, will probably be a Gen Z. And there's a lot of negative views about Gen Zs in media. There's lots of written about them. But I think it's really important to understand what they're going through as well. So the first thing is the wealth transfer. Gen Zs are going to receive more money from their parents than any other generation in the history of mankind. That is a fact. It's the biggest wealth transfer that's ever going to happen. If you are based in the UK, and if you've seen the budget recently, there's no surprise that the inheritance taxes are so much in question, because that is the biggest wealth transfer happening. Compared to baby boomers, compared to millennials, Gen Zs are going to receive more money in inheritance than any other generation. It's the biggest welfare state. I've got no political opinions on this. And I'm not comparing it for 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. But if you look at 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we've got the biggest welfare state in Europe in history. And what I mean by that is if someone falls onto hard times, the state will protect us compared to the National Health Services, compared to the job seeker allowances. It's the biggest welfare state we've ever had. Again, I've got absolutely no political opinions on this, but that is the situation. And the third thing is, it's a pretty good set of economic conditions. Again, not today compared to last year or 2-3 years ago, but if you look at decades, access to capital, access to getting into business, it's a pretty decent place to be in. And the example of that is, you look at your own gyms today. I think Phil mentioned it. 10, 15 years ago, there was probably one gym in a 10-mile radius. There's now 20. What does that mean for a candidate? They've got 20 places that they can apply for. When I worked in the industry, I worked for Virgin Active. There was one Virgin Active, one David Lloyd, and one Everyone Active within a 10-mile radius. So if I got sacked from Virgin Active, guess what I'm doing? Probably going to David Lloyd. The David Lloyd manager also knew the Virgin Active manager. Can't get a job there. Probably go to Everyone Active then. And if they knew each other, I'm pretty much buggered, aren't I? Whereas what's the situation right now? There's probably in that same area, probably about 20, 30 gyms there, and no one talks to each other. So it is a really good set of economic conditions for candidates. May not be for gym owners who are thinking, God, it's actually a pretty tough time to own a gym, but for a candidate's perspective, there are unlimited options, and unemployment rates across Europe are at an all-time low as well. Yes, right. So what does this all mean? It's great me telling you stuff you guys already may know. It's a huge headwind on retention. This is all these things, if you put into any sort of, you speak to anyone out there, that will be, okay, it's bloody hard retaining staff. They've got more money coming in than any other generation out there, so the desire to work is probably going to be lower. But I'm not talking about any one individual, I'm talking about an entire generation there. Secondly, you've got a great welfare state, so if they do lose their job, there is an opportunity of getting another job out there. There's enough support out there for you until you get another job. You also do have opportunity to keep job hopping, and that is something that, people in the previous generation simply did not have. That didn't happen. Go back 30, 40 years. And that's why a lot of like my father worked for the government for 50 years. He's like, I'm not leaving that job. There's very few people like that in the current generation. And it's something we just need to be aware of from that side. And I think this has created a huge imbalance between what employers want and what employees want. And I think we have to accept that. And that's something which we're telling a lot of our clients that is just going to happen. So for example, when I started in recruitment, actually I'll ask you guys this question. What do you think is a good amount of time in employment in a job? So if you're looking at a CV out there, what do you think is a good amount of time? Is it 12 months, 24 months, 3 years, 6 months? What do you think is a good amount of time?
2 years.
2 years? That's solid. Anyone else?
5 years.
3 to 5 years, yeah. The average for a lot of our clients is about 9 to 10 months. And that's even hard for me to accept that. So when we're looking at CVs, we've got to go, my number was by the 2 years. I look at 2 years as that's a solid amount of time. 3 to 5 years is where someone's really gone up and they've progressed and they've done anything else. But if people are leaving in 9 to 10 months, that's a really scary amount of thing. And that's something that is happening with a lot of our clients, where they're going in 9 to 10 months where people are moving. And that's a really hard place to be for you guys, to actually be in a position where how do we actually run a business where a workforce is leaving 9 to 10 months? That's almost incredible. That's almost difficult how you can do that. And what are people doing? And this is an example that we've got from a lot of independents and franchise gym owners, is they're almost accepting a core group of people who are highly motivated, highly compensated, and they're the people who stay for the 5, the 6, the 7-year mark. And they've almost accepted that the people below that core group of people, and that depending on the size of your business, it could be 1 person, it could be 2 people, it could be 3 people, whatever the size of the thing is. But below that, the transient workers, you have to create a model where you have to accept they're coming and going, and they're coming and going. And actually, a lot of you have probably already done that in some ways. You're going, actually, that is the case. So in the case of, let's say, a 3,000, 4,000 member gym, your core person's probably going to be your general manager. That person is probably going to be the person that you go, I'm securing that person's services for the next 3 to 4 years. They're going to be highly motivated. They're going to be highly compensated. Now, this could be through all the benefits and everything. This could be through actual salaries and everything else. Brilliant. But actually, you have to create a business model where the people below that are going to be more transient than they've ever been before. And we've seen that. We have clients that say, 9 to 10 months is absolutely ridiculous, where people are going, great, we're coming in, 9 to 10 months time, go. And again, going back to my example, there's not only a Virgin Active, a David Lloyd and everyone active around. There are 10 other clubs around, and they will do that rounds along with the other sectors out there as well. And I think that's something which the situation that the Gen Zs are in, hopefully that gives you a bit more context in terms of, there's no solution here, but hopefully it gives you a bit more context in terms of why that's actually happening from that side as well.